Are you tired of making your users download the same data every time they launch your app, but don't want to add the complexity of databases or document storage? If so, and you are programming for mobile or desktop, try using Path Provider to access the device's file system. To start, call the getApplicationDocuments directory method provided by Path Provider. This method returns a directory object that points to the location on your user's device that the operating system has allocated for your app. Here, you can create files to store large blobs of binary data, raw JSON that was expensive to load from the server, or, well, anything you can imagine. And what if you have different data, like manifest files or other supporting documents from your server? For that, call getApplicationSupport directory. And what if you just need a temporary folder for data that doesn't need to outlive the current session? Then call getTemporary directory. In any of these scenarios, you have a place to cache free-form data as needed to ensure that your app is as performant as possible. Just don't forget to clean up after yourself. Deleting old, unwanted files prevents wasting your user's storage. So if the hassle of SQLite or document storage isn't for you, reach for Path Provider to easily cache expensive data. You know that line of dots that appears near the bottom of a swipeable page or wizard to indicate your place in the list? Luckily, you can easily add exactly that to your apps with Page Selector. Page Selector is often paired with the tab bar widget for a complete tabbed experience. But you can easily use Page Selector to add the indicator dots to any widgets you like. To start, add a Page Selector widget somewhere in your widget tree. Next, provide a TabController to control your selector. It accepts a length parameter, which tells Flutter how many dots to draw. Whenever your indicator dots are looking a little stale, update the controller's index within setState to get a fresh look. By default, Page Selector pulls from the top-level theme, but you can always provide a color and selected color if the values it finds aren't to your liking. If the dots are too small, use the indicator size property to scale them up or down. And that's it. Next time you're building your own tabbed experience and want indicator dots, reach for Page Selector. Have you ever needed to coordinate the animation of a list of widgets, all behaving similarly? Maybe to build a custom floating action button menu? If so, try the Flow Widget. To start, add a Flow Widget to your app and give it a list of children. Then provide the delegate parameter with an implementation of the FlowDelegate class, which implements Paint Children and should repaint. Paint Children tells Flutter where to draw each of Flow's children, using the Flow Painting Context class's paintChild method. This method takes two parameters, an integer representing the index within the list of children, and a transform representing any layout tweaks for that child. To place the first child in its default position, use context.paintChild, pass 0 to indicate the first child, and use the identity matrix to indicate no transformation. To position the second child 50 pixels below the first, use context.paintChild again, but this time pass 1 as the index of the second child, and use a translation matrix. So far, this feels like a stack that uses matrices instead of positioned widgets, but that's not where Flow shines. To add some serious zest to your widgets, add an animation to your FlowDelegate. Now your Paint Children method is ready to get serious. Loop over your children and use their index alongside the animation's value to create your own custom effects. The nature of that animation is up to you, but your app is now ready for all sorts of creativity, like sporting that original floating action button menu. Just don't forget to supply that animation in your widget tree. And lastly, implement the delegate's should repaint method. Use this to tell Flutter, there's nothing to see here, when there is in fact no change. And just like that, your widgets can get in the zone and dart all over the screen. The Material Design Spec offers many helpful patterns, including a great set of icons. But they're not the only icons out there. Font Awesome's icons are truly, well, iconic. Luckily, with the Font Awesome Flutter package, including them in your Flutter app is as easy as 1, 2, 3. To start, remember the two components of a material icon, the wrapping icon and the inner icon data value. That wrapping icon is just a widget. This is Flutter after all. And icon data values are characters in the special font that comprises material icons. Font Awesome follows this pattern by also using an icon data value wrapped in a widget. The equivalent UI with Font Awesome uses a positional parameter for the icon data value and replaces the icon widget with the FA icon widget. And just like that, your app can display the thousands of extra icons Font Awesome offers. And this can be important if, for example, you want to show the Google G as an icon. And because icons are ultimately just text, you can perform the usual set of transforms on them, like changing their color or changing their size. You know that thing where you hold a down swipe and the list refreshes? Wouldn't it be great if there was a widget that indicates that this refresh is happening? Well, that's what Refresh Indicator is. Wrapping a list view or similarly scrollable widget in a refresh indicator will trigger a refresh when the list is overscrolled. If you want something to actually happen, add a callback function with the onRefresh property. This function isn't given any parameters, but Refresh Indicator expects it to return a future. The ever-spinning indicator of refreshing will continue spinning as long as that future is pending. If it never completes, the spinner will never go away. So make sure that whatever the refresh function does, it eventually completes, even if it's immediate. Once you have the refresh indicator refreshing, you can customize how it looks, changing things like the background color, the color of the spinner, or its width. You can also change how and when the indicator appears. Displacement will affect how far from the edge of the list it appears. And you can override where it thinks the edge of the list is with edge offset. By default, it's set to 0, which starts the indicator at the actual edge of the list. Give a different value, and the indicator will start appearing that many pixels into the list. Finally, use trigger mode set to anywhere or on edge to change whether the indicator will appear regardless of the starting scroll position, or only when it's already at the edge.
Are you tired of Flutter's widget trees? Are you feeling nostalgic for an HTML DOM? Well, look no further than the HTML package. Package HTML is an HTML5 parser that gives you an object that is a model of an HTML document. Dart isn't a web browser, so we do need the HTML parser to get a DOM. Grab a hold of that HTML you've always wanted parsed and send it off to the parser. This will give you a document back, and guess what? You then get access to many of the familiar accessors you're used to from JavaScript. This includes outer HTML, get element by ID, or query selector all. The most common selectors are implemented for methods like query selector, but not all. For example, pseudo selectors like first of type or last of type are not implemented. But otherwise, you now have access to a full DOM tree.